So I've only got a small set of blue ones. Okay, so sorry it's taken a little longer than I had planned. Many things going on, but here are the answers to the questions that some of you asked. So I'll start with the YouTube questions first of all. So Steve Voras, hello mate. If you had the opportunity to become sponsored by a drum company, meaning you could only play that brand of drums from that point on, what brand would you want to be sponsored by, and how about cymbals? So not that long ago, actually, I did a video where I sort of said in my own sort of opinion, I would possibly be a terrible endorsement candidate, because I do like to sort of chop and change, and not necessarily use the same things all the time, and part of that's changed and part of that sort of stayed the same. So I mean, the short answer is, certainly with cymbals would probably be a bit easier. Now, despite the fact that I actually do have some Zildjians on here, which have actually been on here for ages, I have been a lifelong Paiste fan, and I always will be a lifelong Paiste fan. I think, the most recent musical thing I've been doing in terms of a band, I kind of found some cymbals which kind of worked for that particular situation. And for the first time in a long time, or at least that I can remember, I was actually regularly using Zildjians. And it wasn't that I didn't have any Paistes that would fit that particular situation. I think I did, and had that situation not come to an end, in fact, actually, I was going to start taking some Paistes out to do that gig, but I was actually using some older, probably about 40-odd-year-old 14-inch new beats, and then I had an 18-inch Avidus, and I had a 21-inch Avidus. And that was basically it. It was kind of like the smallest cymbal setup that I used actually as well. But as I said, I kind of and actually in here, as I said, this has been. I've had this set up in here, which at the moment is 2K dark thin crashes, an 18 and 19. I've got the Carope. I think it's a 20. I think it's a 20. And then I've got these old sort of mixed. I've always said these were old Ks. I mean, I don't know if they are. They're certainly a mismatched pair. But I've had these in here for absolutely ages, and part of it is because of laziness, and part of it is because I'm kind of like not done with them. But I have been a lifelong Paiste fan. And as I said, I always will be a lifelong Paiste fan. I have more Paiste cymbals than I do anything else. They don't tend to appear in here too much, mainly because when I was gigging regularly, I was pretty much always using Paiste, and in many contexts, for me in my head, Paiste is still the cymbals too, whichever variant of them, but Paiste are still the cymbals that I like to gig with, and I was using the Zildjians in here mainly because I wasn't taking them out to gig with, despite what I just said. But I've always loved the variation with Paiste. I've got a lot of older ones. I mean, some of my older 2002s are almost as old as me. And I've got some sound creations as well, which I tend not to take out too often, to be honest. But again, that's mainly because some of the sound creations I've got wouldn't actually have fit anything that I've really been doing recently. But I also have, as cheesy as it may be, I also have a great fondness for coloured cymbals, and I know some of you might sort of turn your nose up and say no to that, and that's perfectly fine. But I have always liked coloured cymbals since I first saw them at the Montreux Rock Pop Festival in about 1985/86, and they were white ones, and they were promo ones. I think, I mean, it's only my opinion, but like, I think they were specific promo ones made in white for that particular event, because white was never in the catalogue. Certainly when they came out, the Colour Sound 5s in 85, you had sort of red, green, turquoise, and black. And I remember seeing the white ones with the big Peisty logo going across the top and the bottom, which I think you only tend to get on the sort of more promo ones. For obvious reason, having the name blasted on both sides, it's not the sort of thing that you normally come across. But I remember seeing those and thinking they were so cool, and it took me 19 years before I actually got a set of white cymbals, but and some of you will have seen them because they have been on the channel. But I have currently cymbals in regular. I have the 2000 Sound Reflections, so I have brilliant. I have white, black, red, blue. I think that's it, actually. Yeah, I have a lot of Peisty cymbals in a lot of different colours, and of course I have the matching kits as well. So I've only got a small set of blue ones, which are all of the 900. To be honest, they're not my favourite cymbals. The 20-inch crash I actually use as a sort of a light ride, and I've got a 22-inch heavier ride, and an 18-inch crash. They're a little thicker than I would kind of prefer them to be, but they're usable. The hi-hats are actually quite nice. I mean, I quite like the hi-hats, the 900 Colour Sound hi-hats. I have the red series I've got in Colour Sound 5, the original Colour Sound 5. In fact, one of my earliest cymbals was a Colour Sound 5 Red China, which I picked up second hand in about 1987, I think. But I've got a red heavy, big red heavy ride, a big 22-inch thing, and I've got some 14-inch Sound Edge 900s as well. So I've got lots of variants and things. And the black ones, the white ones are all custom signature in 2002s, and then the black ones are all the black ones are actually interesting because they're Visions. There's some Colour Sound. I think there's a Colour Sound 5 China in there. There's some Colour Sound 2000s, and then I've got a couple of black 900s as well. So I've got a good few sort of the 900 series, which I picked up just after they came out. But I like having those variants, and they're kind of fun. And I think going down to pubs or clubs or whatever, I do tend to dig those ones out because they're kind of fun and a little something that I think tend to stick out a little bit in terms of punters going to watch. And how many drummers do you really see turning up with like black cymbals or black set of cymbals or whatever? So Peisty would be my my cymbal choice. That's not to say that I don't love others. I said I have Zildjians, I have a small set of Bosphorus, I have a small set of Sabians, and I have a moderate sized set of Minors as well. All of which I like, but Peisty has been my first love. Since I started playing in 1986 or so. So, as far as drums are concerned, I'm looking around now. I mean, I think at one point I would have said Tama, but I had many issues with Tama, new Tama stuff. So I did say I would never buy any new Tama drums again, and I haven't done since. So I think it would be Pearl, and the reason why, if you haven't seen, I actually did a video on my why I liked Pearl. I have done one on Tama as well. I mean, I don't hate Tama or anything. I've got a lot of Tama kits in here. I have a lot of Tama kits that I'm very, very fond of, both old and new. But there was just too many issues with Tama. And Pearl, I think I have not count. I still don't know how many kits I own, but. I would guess I have probably about as many Pearl kits as I do Tama kits now, including the yellow one behind me there. And in fact, actually, the snare drum there as well. I've got two of those kits, and one of those I've got two of the President series, and I've got two Masters kits. I've got a Custom Z. I'm just looking around now because I've forgotten what I've got. I've got a Session Elite. Which is a great set of drums. I've got the that's a bit of an obvious one, isn't it? The Crystal Beat. Yeah, there, that one. I got lots of Pearl sets. In fact, actually, I've probably got a greater variant of Pearl sets in terms of like colours and finishes and things than I do in the Tama. I just like. Oh, and the other one being. You can't see it, but there's a reference pure behind there, which I've still not done. I've always liked Pearl's hardware. I've always liked the fact that the hardware is really sturdy. It's quite modular in the sense that you can do a lot with it. And I would have said the same about Tama actually. I mean, Tama. If you'd have asked me this question 30 years ago, I would have absolutely have said Tama, because 30 years ago I think Tama was actually completely leading the market in terms of its drums and hardware. But I think a lot of people caught up with that. But I like. I've got a lot of new Pearl stuff. I've got some older stuff. That yellow kit's about 30 years old. The one on top of it, is brand new, but it's designed to be like the kits that they were making 60 years ago. And I do own a kit from 1964. It feels very much very, very similar in feel and playability and everything as that Slingerland kit does. So they really did a good job with that. And I've got a lot of stuff that's kind of sort of in between as well. And I just love. There's just a lot of things that I think from our childhood, actually, I think this is probably where it stems from. So, like a lot of us, I used to like looking at catalogues. I still do actually periodically, and obviously where I do reference photos and stuff, and they come from a lot of the catalogues which I saw. I mean, I've got a lot of catalogues here actually, but I tend not to dig them out because they're kind of in a corner. I can't get to them. So I tend to go to, actually, and this is not a plug, but he's a damn fine, nice man, and I do want to mention it as a tangent here. If you don't listen to the Drum History podcast, or it's on YouTube as well, you really should. And because there's lots of really interesting stuff on there. But the time that I'm doing this, which is the 25th of July, 2022, the most recent podcast has actually featured a gentleman I've known to talk to for I hate to think how long, actually, a long time, because it's been a long time since I've actually seen him. But in fact, I think I actually still, Andy, if you see this, mate, I can actually remember the last time we had a conversation. But if you listen and watch to the Drum History podcast, the most current episode that came out last week is with an Englishman called Andy Yule. And Andy, amongst other things, I'd completely forgotten that. Those of you sort of my age might remember Vistalights.com many years ago, which is something that I'd completely forgotten about. And until the other day when I listened to the interview with Andy, and I was reminded of that, and many fond memories came up of that. But yeah, Andy is the person behind Drum Archive. And Drum Archive is basically an archive full of catalogues. And I frequently go to Drum Archive to get some of the photos that you see in these videos. So Andy's a lovely man. In fact, Andy was the person who very kindly sent me the yellow felt for my yellow bass drum, which I did actually put in the drum, but I just didn't get a chance to take a photo of it for when I did the kit. Yeah, listen to the. I mean, I'm sure people that watch this will actually know Andy either personally or from online. It's a great little interview, and Drum Archive is a fantastic resource for looking up catalogues and things. So going back anyway, Pearl, yes, Pearl is my answer to that. I've always liked Pearl. I've always some of my all-time favourite catalogue kits, which is why I mentioned all that, were by Pearl. The BLX, the original sort of square badge, rectangular badge, Masters, of which that is one. I have another one over behind the kit. The Custom Z, which was my all-time most desirable kit that I ever wanted, I think, was Pearl. And you know, it's I've got more Pearl kits in the last sort of year and a half than I have done anything else. So that must mean, I think, that the answer to the question would have to be Pearl. So that may surprise a few people. I mean, in fact, actually, may not. I mean, I sit here doing these videos, and this entire row of snare drums, of which is about a dozen, 2, 4, 6, 8, or 10 then, these are all Pearl. All these snare drums are Pearl. It's not all of them, but these are all Pearl snares. Some of my favourite snare drums are Pearl. Yeah, I just think that they make a great product, you know, I've always enjoyed playing them. So, and hey, Pearl Export, I've never owned one. I've played on plenty of them, but they're like what, the world's most best-selling drum kit. I mean, that should be enough by itself. Anyway, so Steve, thank you for the question, mate. Okay, next question. So this is from Wilf. Thank you, mate. I've commented before about your Spawn carbon snare. That was a video I did a long time ago. I'm the guy who got the other one for sale at the time from Graham Russell Drums, and I remember that. I remember seeing that. I noticed yours has a different throw-off to mine, and I was wondering if it was a part you had changed. I have a Spawn branded throw-off and butt plate. Right, the simple answer to that is, and I'll try and dig a photo out of this drum. So the shells were made, from memory anyway, because this snare drum is probably at least 15 years old. I bought that snare from my local shop, which happened to be, I think I'm safe in saying, the Spawn Drums dealer in the UK at the time. They're not anymore, but it was the only place you could buy Spawn drums. And I bought a whole bunch within quite a sort of close period. Now I've got a 14x5 carbon fibre, and then I've also got a 14x5. It's a stave. It's a wooden stave drum, and I can't for the life of me actually recall what the wood is without trying to find it and looking up. But the carbon fibre drum has one of the original plastic nickel drumworks throw-offs on it. And I mean, at the time those came out, they were thought to be sort of a little bit of a radical idea, radical concept, and a lot of people subsequently put them on their drums. And then, unfortunately, a lot of people found that they broke. I've only ever had one break on me, but I've probably got a lot of drums that have got them on, but I don't play them enough to where it becomes a problem. But I did have one go on me. Actually at a gig, which was a little bit annoying, as you might imagine. But mate, to answer the question, basically my drum came with the nickel drumworks throw off on it. So yes, it may be. Well, obviously, you said yours has got a Spawn branded one on there, so I would suggest either one of two things happen there. One, yours is a later version than mine, or alternatively, the previous owner had got one and retrofitted it to the drum. But mine is 100% original, and it's definitely got the nickel drumworks throw off on it, and I've never changed that. In fact, I think I'm pretty safe in saying I've never changed the heads on it either. So that drum is 100% stock from memory. I know where it is in the other room. I can't actively get to it because it would take me about 5 minutes to move all the cases. So thank you for the question. So right, okay. Oh, well, this is actually. This is more of a sort of an ongoing question, I suppose. Could you post a complete list of your drums and cymbals? Oh, sorry, this is from Phil Phillison. Could you post a complete list of your drums and cymbals in the description of your future videos? I lose track of what you have and what I would humbly ask you to demo. Mate, absolutely not a problem. I will try and remember to do that. I did actually, you know what? It was actually when I read this question. I actually read this before I did this, and I completely forgot that what I used to do, because I think someone had mentioned this before, and what I used to do was what's on my kit video, which would then precede the sort of next bunch of videos, and that was at a time. I think that was at a time where I was more regularly or able to get out more regularly to do these videos. And what I would do is basically do that video, which would be a rundown of everything, the cymbals and everything like that, and then basically I would sit and do 2, 3, 4, 5 snare drums in one go, and then it would kind of make sense in the bigger picture. But I'll try and do two things. So first of all, I will try and do a what's on my kit video to sort of preface subsequent videos, so you can actually get like a better look at things, and hopefully not, but failing that, I will list everything in the description. So but it's a great idea, and I'm sorry that I moved away from doing that. It wasn't a conscious thing, so thank you for that, and I will do it. Okay, right, Cameron Dean, hello mate. What is your favourite snare that you own, and what is your favourite kit that you own? Right, I've done a couple of videos on these, but my favourite wood snare would still be the Craviole Timeless Timber. In fact, actually, I only did that video. I think that was the last video I actually did that I put out. So yeah, that's the the Timeless Timber, 14 by 5.5. I do love that drum. I don't play it so much, simply because it's worth rather a lot of money, and I don't want to stuff it up, to be honest. But it's a great thrill to play, and it's lovely to have. I never get sick of seeing it, which I think is a good thing. But there's that. So the favourite metal snare drum would be still the 14 by 6.5 nickel over brass diamond series. That's the AK Craviole. Favourite kit? Oh, that'd be a tough one. That would be a tough one now. See, I think I've bought some more kits since I actually did my favourite kit video. And at the time, I think what happened, I need to maybe look, but I think what happened was that I did a video a while back on my favourite kits. And that was based on what I had at that point. And my two favourite kits then were the Timeless Star Walnut and my Craviole. And the Star Walnut was because of the quality of the drums and sort of, you know, and the Craviole was just because. But the thing is I then subsequently, like, I think that was a couple of years ago, and I subsequently, over a 2-year sort of period, it's kind of like tailed off a bit. Well, mostly tailed off now. But I bought a whole bunch of kits. I bought like at least a dozen kits over the period of maybe 18 months, which is stupid, and I know that. That's fine. But that kind of made the result of doing all that was that it kind of made the previous video a little bit obsolete. And I haven't taken it down because I think it's always interesting to look back at these things and see how you progress and or degress. I think in many ways. But I think now, because even after I did that last video, which wasn't that long ago, I've bought some other kits since. And I love them all for. I think in terms of the kits that I have, I can pretty much honestly say I do love them all for very specific reasons, and how they make me feel when I play them. But in terms of ultimate favourite kit, that would be really tough. That would be really tough. I mean, you know what? It's not very often I can't think of actually what to say, but in this instance, that's kind of got me stumped, because that's actually for me that's actually despite the fact that I have more snare drums than I have kits. It's an easier question to answer. What my favourite snare drums. Okay, I can't really answer. But kits I am very, very, very fond of. The Craviole kit, the Star Walnut kit, and then I've got. I mean, I'll say my Grand Star kit. I mean, because the thing is, I can break this down. This is why this is a tough question for me, because. Metal drums and metal snares are metal snares. Wood snares are wood snares. And despite the fact that you have, different sort of metals or different species of woods within those two sort of two categories, I think for me it's a little easier to just lump everything into one category or the other category and to then come out with an answer. But because kits, I think kits are a little bit more personal in terms of, obviously, there's more of them for a start, in terms of the vibe that they give you, the feel that they give you, the way that they play, the way that they're set up, what they were actually intended to do, like with the President kit, a President Series kit there, that's intended to sort of be almost like a tribute, like a reproduction of a drum kit that came out in 1961. So it's a modern kit, but it's designed to have a vintage feel and sound and look, and it does. And I really like those drums to the point where if I can get hold of some more, because typically with that, you know, I got to the point where I had all of the available drums that they had available at the time, and then typically, and I'm not kidding, like the week after I get the second kit, they announce a whole load more, and I'm like, typical. So in terms of, like, if you break it down in those terms, general purpose kit, I think my favourite would be the Star Walnut. Although I think the yellow one would be a close second, actually. In terms of, you know, kit just because, the Craviole, it would have to be, wouldn't it? In terms of sort of like favourite kit from the 80s, probably the Grand Star, especially now because it's like I don't know how many pieces it actually is. Hold on, 10, 11, 12. So for the Grand Star I actually have 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, two 16s, two 22s, and technically I have the matching Snares. So that's a 10-piece kit. Can't play a 10-piece kit, but like, you know, so that's a 10-piece. But in terms of like, you know, the kit, the era that it represents and what it represents to me, which just basically went round about when I started playing drums, you know, that's awesome. Power toms and everything. In terms of like, you know, my favourite kit that I lusted after for 30 years, the Custom Z, because again, it would have to be. I wanted one for over 30 years. I mean, I only got one last year in 2021, but I wanted one of those for over 30 years, and that you know, that desire to have one never left me. It never went away. I don't think I'd ever get one, but you know, and so what is my favourite kit is a really hard question to answer. So my answer would be that I actually couldn't answer it in a straight answer, but hopefully that gives an idea of where I'm kind of headed with that. Really, you know, I have a lot of different kits for you know, different reasons, because I like to sort of mix it up a little bit. I mean, in terms of you know, I could, if I broke it down, you know, I'll give you like my favourite toms, my favourite kick drum, and then at the moment I've got to say actually one of my favourite kick drums is this one I'm sat behind, which I'm going to try and like pull over a bit. I don't know how that's going to come out, but there you go. It's my trick kit, which you know, a video will be coming up on that fairly soon. But this is a 22 by 14, and it's 3mm thick aluminium. How heavy metal is that? And it's got it's not, you know, obviously most drums have air holes. This has got air vents. It's fantastic. I've been jamming on this for a couple of weeks now. I mean, I've had it for a few months, but it's the first time I'd set it up in here. And I've got to say, for me, a mark of a great drum, it's not how it sounds in my ears. It's not how it sounds when I do these recordings and things. It's how it sounds by itself in the room. And this is one of those drums that just sounds fantastic in the room. And just on that basis alone, I love it. But yeah, I mean, I think that kind of, I mean, I've got lots of drums in here. Obviously, that's kind of saying the obvious, isn't it? But you know, in terms of like my favourite little bop kit, it's my only kit as well. But it's the British Drum Company. I want to say it's a Lounge Series. I can never remember. That one, the brown one up there, 18, 12, 14. I never really thought I'd own an 18, 12, 14, but that came up a couple of years ago, and it's lovely. It really is. I've actually I haven't played it since I've done it, but I actually put a hole in the front of the bass drum head, because I don't play hard bop, and therefore I don't need the bass drum to sound like a large tom. So. I mostly bought that kit because I figured that having a smaller bass drum would be useful. It's not the smallest, but I have two 16s as well, so it's clearly not the smallest bass drum I have. But you know, it's a nice kit. It sounds fantastic, and it's kind of another one of those sort of like classic, vintagey, timeless look things going on with it as well. So I mean. And the Club Custom as well, you know, Club Custom. I look round. I mean, it's just so many kits, so little time. So do you see why it's a problem? I have lots of different favourite kits. That's my honest answer. Right. Right. The Clout. Hello, mate. Right. What drew you to the Craviole snares? Now, this. Right, so I never actually, before I started collecting Craviole snares, I sort of ended up buying a few, and it was just at that point, it was a case of I just liked them and I bought a few. And then I actually remember thinking about it, and I thought, well, if I'm going to get into this collecting lark, there's no point in really trying to go down the vintage route, because there's a couple of people, Mike Curotto, Mike Curotto for basically anything vintage and everything vintage. Bunny Carlos had obviously a lot of cool stuff. Chet Falzarano, he had not all, but a lot of the Billy Gladstone stuff. There's a fellow called Dave Brown over here. He had a nice collection of like vintage stuff, and there's lots of guys like all the vintage gear, and that's cool. I mean, but the thing was it kind of struck me even at that point, 15 odd years ago, that those guys kind of had the vintage thing all sewn up, and there was very little chance of being able to pick up something really cool. Either there was little chance of picking something up really cool, full stop, or there was little chance of picking something, probably even less chance of picking something up really cool for not a stupid price. So that was kind of what led me down the route of the Craviole, was that at the time I was really buying them, they were in fact, actually, when I first started buying them, they'd really only just started out. Johnny had really only just sort of started out as the Craviole Drum Company. They were current, they were happening, but they were still fairly quiet. And I think I managed to pick up a lot of the stuff that I had quite easily. I mean, I won't say it wasn't cheap, because it wasn't expensive. Sorry, because it was. I put a lot of money into the Cravioles that I have, but it seemed to be a more viable choice at the time. And as I said, they were still making. Obviously, they are still making them now, but it seemed like a more viable thing to do. Basically, that's kind of like the very short answer. Is it seemed like a more viable thing to do at the time, and I was able to pick up lots of little sort of one-offs, or very, very small. Steve Maxwell did, I think it was 3 very small runs of like 5 drums to commemorate different things or different drummers. I've got a couple of one-offs. The 14 by 5.5 with wood hoops, the white marine pearl that I've got. That was the very first one that they did like that, with 30-degree bearing edges. So I was able to pick up a lot of cool drums at the time they were made. I think mainly because they weren't on quite as many people's radars as they are obviously now, so it just made it easier. But yeah, the very short answer is it was just a more viable alternative at the time, really. Okay, okay, so that's Zilge 33. If I have a crystal beat with a clear CS black dot tom heads, do I need the same on the kick? Not necessarily. I can't remember what's on mine, actually. I've got a feeling I do. Oh no, I tell a lie. Actually, I did have. So I did have a CS dot on my crystal beats for a long time, but I think I changed that out because I got given the red coated, not the red coated, the red the red Remo Emperors. When they first came out, the colour tones, I got those to review when they came out, and it came with a kick drum head as well. So I've got a feeling and I'm pretty sure I'm not wrong. I actually have got a red Power Stroke 3 on there now. But I did have, if I actually got on the blue set of acrylics that I've got, which are, well, actually, those ones. The kick drum is just down there. Now that's a 20 by 20 man-sized drum. And I actually do have a CS dot on there, and in fact, as it goes, actually, as you may have seen a moment ago, I have CS dots on this trick kit on the top, albeit on the toms, not on the kick drum. Do you need the same on the kick? Really, it just depends on the sound that you're going for. So going back to the 70s and I think certainly the mid 80s, up to the mid 80s, a lot of drums came or had CS dot heads on them. Particularly, even now, a lot of people have CS dot heads on things like concert toms. It's because they have a controlled sound, and the CS dot sound was something that I've only very recently got into. I've tried them before, and I kind of I wasn't really feeling it, but I tried them again. I think I actually said this in the video I did for the Session Elite. I've got CS dots on those drums, and I really like the sound now. But it is a specific sound. The dot does take away a lot of the ring, which is kind of the point. Now, in answering the specific question, do I need the same on the kick? It really depends on what you're trying to achieve with the kick drum. Now, this particular kick drum, I think, is fairly. Yeah, this one's fairly dead. I don't know why. I was only playing this earlier on. I can't remember what it sounds like. Is actually relatively dead. But this has got a rolled up sort of tube of blankets in them, I think. So if you're playing, it depends on the type of music you're playing and what you really want to get out of it. So if you want a really dead sound, then probably putting a CS dot on the kick drum is going to be a good start, because, as I said, it's to control the sound. So you're already having some level of muffling on the drum, and then if you want to make it more dead, obviously put a blanket in the drum and then go from there. But if you're playing, say for instance, jazz or hard bop or something like that, where you want a potentially more ringy sound, then that might not be the right choice. My answer really would be take into consideration what music it is you're playing and what you're trying to achieve out of the drum, and the overall kit as well. I tend to go for ringy toms and a much more dead sounding kick drum. So that is kind of generally reflected in my head choices. But I also like to have the what I once read as called the musical thump, and I like the musical thump thing. And because a lot of the time I'm either recording these drums or I'm using them live and I'm running microphones and in-ears, having a little bit of rounded sort of thump to it is kind of what I want to hear. So yeah, take into consideration the music that you're playing and what you want to achieve out of the drum. You don't have to have this one. Again, a perfect example. At the moment I've got CS. I keep saying at the moment because I'm going to be changing these heads for something different. But at the moment I have CS dots on the two toms, and I have a smooth white Power Stroke 3 on the batter side of the kick drum. So obviously they are not even remotely the same. So you don't need to have the same heads on the bass drum that you do on the toms, but just take into consideration what it is you're trying to achieve and the music that you're playing. So I hope that helped. Where are we? Right, okay. Roy Beckerman, hello. Right, so I did actually answer this on YouTube, but I'll say it again. Have you tried the Pearl Sensitone Phosphor Bronze snares, seeing that you like Pearl? Now the answer I gave is still the case. It's no, I haven't. I do have, I don't know if it's a Phosphor Bronze or not. I did pick up a Tama bronze snare, and it's not one of the bell bronze. I did pick up one of those a few months back, but I think that's actually just a straight bronze one. I don't think I've ever actually played a phosphor bronze snare drum. It's kind of one of those things that I'm fascinated to try, because it's one of those things that kind of, I always thought anyway, had kind of like a bit of a mystique and a cool factor to it. So it's something I will try as and when I can. Okay, so this is from Fabio, and I know I've answered this one as well, but Fabio actually doesn't live too far from me, and we bumped into each other in the local store. So, but just wondering, is your place soundproof? If so, how did you do it? Now, I think this question has come up several times over the years. So, just to give you, if I can find a photo of the outside, I have taken a few over the years. So this actually was. So I'll take a step back quickly. So the building is actually about 8 meters that way, probably about 4 meters that way, and it's basically a converted garage. You possibly, if you saw the outside of it, you possibly wouldn't think it was from that end. If I showed you a photo of that end, which I'm not going to do because it's just more hassle than it's worth, you would see that there is actually a garage door on it still, and in fact a regular door as well. So it's a converted garage. I did not convert it. The studio was here when we bought the house 10 years ago, and it had been a project studio before that. In fact, actually, for a long time, I think had been a sort of project studio, which also doubled as a rehearsal studio for, you know, if you sort of knew the people who were living here, you could come in and rehearse. I was actually told not long ago that a semi-well-known drummer who used to live here also recorded many albums here as well. He was a jazz drummer, a British jazz drummer. So the room itself is flown, so there's about that much. It's sitting on about that much of sort of concrete base, and the walls are probably about that thick. I don't know what the composition of the walls is. I just know that they're about that thick. So working on the basis that working on a very simple basis that the best way to soundproof a room is to have sort of solid gap, solid gap, solid gap. I'm going to assume it's somewhere along those lines. And then the ceiling, again, I've not actually seen up into the ceiling, but I can say that there's probably about that much of a gap between the ceiling and the actual roof. So the roof is actually much higher than what it sort of is here, and I think it probably is about. I'm gonna guess about probably about 6.5 feet up. Maybe a bit more. Maybe a bit more. I'm 5'10", 5'11", something like that. And there's plenty of headroom for me up there. Yeah, so the room is the room would be more soundproof. So this basically used to be set up, and I can put pictures of what this was before I filled it up with all this nonsense. But so when this was a project studio, the other room was the control room, and this room was the live room. And I don't know if I've got any photos of it, but over in that corner behind where the camera is, there's a little hole in the wall about that big where all the cabling used to go through. And there is also a door here. There's an inner door. In fact, actually, before I get to that, so there's actually a glass. There's a glass window which is completely covered by drums. You'd never see it, but so if you go back far enough, both on YouTube and on the Facebook page for this room. You will actually see photos where you can see the window. But as I said, there's a door here as well, which is, I think it's actually two doors that have been stuck together. It's about that wide, but you can very clearly see that there's two halves to it, as opposed to three halves. What a stupid thing to say. But the door, and obviously when you're recording and stuff, ideally the door will be shut. Now, it was far too much hassle to keep shutting the door. I mean, I used to, when there was a lot less stuff in here, I used to just shut the door. And then basically, as more stuff came in here to live, now I have a load of sort of regularly used hardware along the wall and the floor, and so basically that door has not been shut in, I don't know how many years, at least 5 years. It's still on the hinges, but and I've actually got, I rarely turn it on these days. I mean, mainly because I haven't even plugged it in. But there's actually a Peisty gold center light up display that's on the door. It's screwed onto the door. So I think closing it now would actually be rather difficult anyway. But yeah, when I plug it in, it looks really cool. But so yeah, it would be more soundproof if I shut the door. As it is, though, I'm reliably informed that whilst you can hear it in the house, it is only on a very muffled basis. And I've never had any complaints. I've played in here till like midnight before. I mean, not all the time, not regularly. I mean, it's 10:30 at night now. I could quite easily sit here for an hour and bash away and not bother anyone. So it's one of those things. I live in a fairly busy road, which becomes quite quiet at night. And whilst that potentially could be a problem, because obviously if there's nothing else going on, it's a lot easier to hear me playing drums. But as I said, and my next door neighbours on either side have never mentioned anything about me playing drums, so I'm going to take that as a good thing. Right, so moving on to the Instagram questions. Right, Stacey Plant. Can I buy the Orange Swell Club Custom kit? Yeah, please. Yeah, please, pretty please. Mate, you know the answers to that. Yeah, Stacey has a very nice blue Club Custom. But I love my Club Customs. And you know that anyway, mate. I know that you know that, but yeah. It doesn't matter. So I don't like disappointing people. Okay, Matt Butlin, hello mate. Would you rather have a bass drum size snare drum or a snare drum size bass drum? I'm talking 22 and 14 inch. You know what? Anything is possible when it's A&F, I guess. I would like actually a snare drum sized bass drum. That would be interesting. And probably more viable for me. You know what? I've toyed Neil Peart. Those of you are Neil Peart fans. He, on his later electronic kits, he had the small bass drum. Now I know he back in the Tama days, he used to have a little 18-inch bass drum. And then when he went to DW, they used to make him an even smaller one. I've got a feeling that was about 14 inches or so. I'm sure there'll be many nerds out there that will give me the right answer if that wasn't the right answer. But I could always see myself playing a 14-inch bass drum. Now I know what's his name, Eric Binder. I think it's Eric Binder. I'm going to say that. If you say this, mate, which I don't think you will, but sorry if I got your name wrong. Now, he's a Craviole artist, and I happened to see very, very recently, he actually was on a video. He was doing a masterclass, I think it was, and he had what looked to be a 14-inch bass drum. I've never played a bass drum that small. I have two 16s. One is the Manu Cache bass drum, which is, for all intents and purposes, just a floor tom turned over, and then I have a Craviole 16, which is actually 16 inch. I've said this before. It's a 16-inch head size and an 18-inch depth. So all you North Americans just say 18 by 16. No, it's actually, just for once, it's the other way around, and it's if you say 18 by 16, that would mean it's an 18-inch head, and it's just not. It's a 16 by 18, and that feels like a proper bass drum. Now, for me, going off a slight tangent, but I think it's relevant, what I've always found with those two bass drums, even though they're 2 inches bigger than what we're actually talking about, is that the Manu Cache very much feels like you're playing a floor tom. I think I've just about got it set up at the moment. I haven't used it in a few years, but I think I've just about got it set up to where it kind of sounds and feels okay. But then it's also very dependent on it's very dependent on the beater that I use as well. But I've never had that bass drum in a position where I could say it was enjoyable to play. The other end of the same spectrum is the 16-inch Craviole actually completely feels like a proper bass drum. It has wood hoops on it. The Manu Cache has metal triple flange tubes on it. So the Craviole has proper, fully fledged bass drum wood hoops on it. And I think if you're going to have a 16-inch bass drum, if you have a choice, get one with wood hoops on it. And it will absolutely make the difference. It really will, because I'm absolutely convinced that is the one massive difference between those two bass drums, because you can completely feel the difference, and you can hear the difference as well. As I said, one sounds like a bass drum, the other one just sounds like an upturned floor tom, and it kind of just sounds like that. It's not fun to play. So I'm going to say a 14-inch bass drum, but making sure it has wood hoops on it, because otherwise it would be horrible. That was a fun question. Oh, right. Right, Dr. Knitting Bear is actually a friend of mine in the real world. And he's not a drummer, he's not even a musician, but he's a good friend of mine. So what would be the first song that you teach? My daughter's name is Peanut. Well, my daughter's name is not Peanut, that's her nickname. But what will be the first song that you teach Peanut to play? I don't know, actually. My daughter's nearly 3. She comes in here and it does enjoy having a little bit of a bash for about 20 or 30 seconds, and then tends to get bored. So already she has, I think, the ideal concentration span to be a drummer. But I don't know. I think the earliest piece of advice that I can remember when I was into drums by a few years at that point, but still very much learning. Well, obviously everyone's still learning, but I was very much novice at the time, and I remember this as being, this was the advice, and it was actually at a clinic which I think at least 2 other people I know completely separately of each other were also at, by the sounds of it. But it was the clinic in John Shearer's Talking Drums in Archway when he was demoing the Big Silly Custom Z kit. And if you were there, then you will know what it is I'm talking about. And I know a few people who will watch this and will know exactly what I mean. I mean, this was the tail end of the 80s, and this was very much two kick drums. There were 2 flying kick drums as well, and I think it was a lot more. It was probably at least 3 up and 2 down. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 4 up and 2 down. But it was a massive, huge custom Z kit. Probably would have been cost an absolute fortune at that point. But the one thing that he said, which has stuck with me ever since, was basically play along to AC/DC. And it's not because it's simple, because if you listen to AC/DC, I think technically what Phil Rudd is playing, well, first of all, what he's actually playing is arguably quite simple, but that is the deceptive thing about it, because first of all, who the hell would want to hear someone like Neil Peart or Terry Bozzio or I'd say probably any of the modern sort of thrash drummers playing AC/DC. AC/DC's music doesn't need lots of fills and lots of rudiments and things in it. It just doesn't. So that's the first thing. And then the other thing is that basically it's not what Phil Rudd plays, it's how he plays it, and that is the hard thing. And that took me a long time as a drummer to actually work out for myself. Now, so I think in answer to the question, Luke, if you ever see this video, which you probably won't, but my answer to that, what would be the first song I teach my daughter to play? Possibly something by AC/DC, but I would also explain to her it's about nailing the feel of it as much as it is playing along to what he's actually playing. Right. Oh, okay. J Drums 90. Hello. This is interesting actually. So I sort of alluded to this, I think, in many ways. Has there been any drums or drum that has not lived up to its reputation or your expectation? Right. So part of the answer to that is really the reason why I said I would never buy any Tama stuff again, because basically I was having nothing but issues with it. I mean, I'm not going to go into it in detail. I did a whole video of it. It was seen a few hundred times, and then I took it down because it wasn't worth all the ear aching from the people from Tama who didn't like the truth. So I tell you what, is a generalised answer to that question. Doesn't live up to its reputation or expectation. That as a general answer would be any drum that comes out of a factory with a manufacturing defect. I'm not talking about stuff that gets damaged in transit, which is unfortunately a lot of the time nothing to do with anyone in the drum industry. When you're sending stuff out the factory, and in fact actually some of the Tama stuff even had a hand signed label on it saying it had been personally inspected by someone, and there was marks on it, or in one instance it literally had not been finished properly. If companies are sending out drums that have obvious defects on them in the finishing or whatever, then absolutely that has disappointed. It has disappointed me. I could tell you the individual drums, but in terms of in terms of I think the spirit of the question, I had an IOT Keplinger for a couple of years. I subsequently sold it to someone I know, and he enjoys it way more than I did, and that is cool by me. But it wasn't. There was just something about the Keplinger which I always wanted a Keplinger. And if you don't know who Greg Keplinger is, check the guy out. I mean, you might not be able to find too much about him. He's based up in Seattle, or Seattle area anyway, and he is very, very well known for making metal drums, and particularly metal drums which he stamps on the inside, like with the ink stamp. Famously puts "not fragile" inside each of the shells, and they're not. They're built like tanks, from my understanding. I mean, I've only ever sort of physically handled the drum that I had, but I've been very well versed with Greg's work for many years, and he did the Black Iron drum for DW a couple of years back. I think he's made drums for other people as well, sort of here and there. But he was very famous for making these big heavy metal snare drums in his kitchen, and he makes all sorts of other bits and pieces as well, percussion items as well. But yeah, it wasn't the fault of the drum, because the person that owns that drum now is very happy with it. I just think it was one of those things that after wanting one for so long, I had it, and whilst the recordings I did with it, I did actually quite like the in the room feel and sound of it. There was just something about it. It was kind of, I don't know what it was. It wasn't the fault of the drum, I know that much. But it just kind of, there was just something about it. It didn't really sort of work with me, and I was a little bit disappointed to move it on, because it was something that I kind of picked up, and it didn't sort of come up very often, and I'd always sort of wanted a Keplinger, and then it kind of just sort of didn't work out for me. Other examples of that, I don't know. I've historically never really sold a lot of drums up until a couple of years ago. I did have 3 edge drums at one point. I had a 14.7. I've got the 14.6 I kept, and I had a 13.7. And the 13.7 was great. It's just that there was kind of no real point in having 3 of the damn things. But the 14x7, I think that kind of, it's one of those things that I got it because I really liked it, and then when I came to play it again, it was like, it was a bit underwhelming, and I kind of, I was thinking about selling it. I didn't sell it that long ago, actually. I think it was only 2021 I sold it, but I was thinking about maybe moving it on, and I put it behind the kit and had a play on it. And I was really quite underwhelmed when I played it, and so I sold it to someone who had it was in the same finish as his kit, so that kind of worked out all right. But I think it's safe to say it now, because A, it was a long time ago, and B, I'm absolutely convinced the guy doesn't make drums anymore. It wasn't a drum that I had for very long. It was a review drum that I was given for MikeDelby.com. And this was probably 16 or 17 years ago. It was one of the earlier drums that I ever did. I've been doing that for 20 years now. But that was one of the earlier drums that I did. And I was given this drum, and this was really before the internet was around, obviously. But at the same time, so there was no real social media. Websites were less of a thing for smaller drum makers, and this particular drum kind of stood out to me for all the wrong reasons, which is why, I hate to think how many products I've reviewed over the years. I've been reviewing, I was actually thinking about this only this morning, funny enough. I've been reviewing drums for MikeDelby.com for 20 years. In fact, 20 years next month, I think, is actually the first time I did one. I did a review. So I have done at least, for the most part, I have done at least 2 reviews a month for 20 years. So you can work out how many that was. And it's only generally the products that were were either damaged when they turned up at my house, or were just bloody awful. So this drum was made. It was made in the UK. It was a wood drum. It was made. I'm pretty sure it was either a 14 6.5 or 14 by 7. I'm going to say it was maybe a 14.7. I don't remember if it was a stave drum, but I think there's a good possibility it was a stave drum, since I think, from my knowledge of drum building, it's probably slightly easier to build a stave drum at home when you don't have the facility to make plies in the first instance. But I think I'm going to say it was possibly a stave drum on that basis. So it turned up, and it kind of, on the surface, it was like, wasn't anything special. It was kind of like a natural finish, and there was two things that stick out in my mind with that drum. Apart from anything else, which would probably be like it had cheap hardware on it or something. But this drum was labelled as number 2, so give the bloke a chance, sort of thing. But as I said, I'm absolutely sure he doesn't make drums anymore, because I did a few years ago try and look up what I remembered the name to be, and there's nothing. So, but the drum came with two little design things on it, which I have stuck in my mind. So the first one was that it came with a Tommy Lee Aquarian high energy drum head on it. Now, those of you that know Tommy Lee know that the sticks he uses, this is a Vic Firth SD4. So the sticks he uses were probably about twice the width of this, and a good bit longer as well. These I think these are something like, they may be 16 inches, they may be 15 3/4. So Tommy Lee's drumsticks are at least a 2B and 17 inches long, I think. He's known for hitting the drums hard. But this is the only snare drum I've ever come across, and that's all of the snare drums that I've bought, and all the snare drums that I've reviewed. So we're talking a good few hundred, and this is the only one I've ever come across that had this Tommy Lee high energy head. In fact, it's actually, I think, the only time I've ever seen a high energy head. Now, just to give you some context, apart from it being a thicker ply head for a start, unlike the Remo CS Dot, which is, and I will take on a 13 inch head, the CS Dot is that. So what's that? Probably about 5 inches. So just to give you some reference, it was as I said, it was a 14-inch head, and the Tommy Lee high energy head has a dot that is about, this is a 14, and the dot is about 13. It's a big dot, and it's a big dot for a reason. As I said, the guy hits hard, and that's fine. But it's the only drum I've ever come across with that head on it. And unless you happen to be playing with 17-inch long 2Bs and swinging for the rafters, it seems like an utterly strange choice of head to put on your snare drum, for a start. And the other thing was, with that drum, was that it turned up, and this was in the days when I used to have a bit more time, because I wasn't doing videoing or anything. So I would just basically do a written account. So this was in the days where I could afford, time-wise, to take the drum apart a little bit and take the head off and have a good look inside and stuff. And I remember taking one of the heads, where it had been the top head off, and it was sort of fairly average looking at the inside of the shell, until you get to the air hole, and I absolutely swear it looked like the inside of the shell where the air hole was. It looked like it had been attacked with a hatchet. It was such a literal hack job It was such an utter mess, and that was possibly. I think that was possibly the single worst snare drum I've ever been given to review. It was horrible. I mean, it didn't sound terrible, but as I said, the thing is with the head choice, that kind of head is designed to be hit hard, and most people don't hit as hard as Tommy Lee. So that totally didn't live up to anything, and I'd imagine that's probably the reason why. Even if I can't remember the name off the top of my head right now, but even if I did remember it and I said, "Oh, so and so drum company," most of you never have heard of them. There's a reason why. Last one. So. Oh, okay. So it's Matt, actually, from Sear Drums UK. I'm positive you've never been asked this, mate, but what's your favourite snare drum that you own? Well, obviously I've covered that one. I think, actually, though, my definitive snare drum, I think out of the two that I mentioned, the AK Craviole and the Timeless Timber, I would probably say my favourite one would be the Timeless Timber. So there you go, Matt. I did actually answer it. And as I said before, whenever it was, ages ago now in this video, it's a lot easier to pick a snare drum than it is to pick a kit. So anyway, look, thank you to everyone that asked a question. I hope that provided some maybe some insight and a slight bit of entertainment. I don't know how long this video is going to be, but for those of you who got all the way through it, well done. Thank you. And maybe we'll do this again sometime. See you later.